Hey, I'm Taylor. I'm going to talk about books. So I'm going to talk about Human Acts first. Synopsis, if you forgot, Taylor. So Human Acts is about the Gwangju Revolution of, I think it was like 1979 or something like that, right? So South Korea is in a dictatorship, and they're in this weird transition period of this dictator got assassinated, and then someone else succeeded. I think it was a military coup or something like that. And then his successor just continued that dictatorship. And they're in this weird stage where there's a lot of like revolution, a lot of talk about democracy and things like that. And this book takes place in those events, and is very hyper focused on this one event in Gwangju. It focuses on these characters who are very interconnected with each other, and talks about, kind of just explores their feelings, what they're doing at that time, the results and consequences of their actions and things like that. And I would say that this book was pretty depressing to read. It's graphic in a way that's not typically graphic, and I don't mean that as in like extremely gory or extremely vulgar. It's graphic in a way that it feels very raw, and a lot of, I would say, unprocessed emotion happens, and the language is very simple. The writing style is very simple, and so it makes a lot of the things that the characters are describing feel a lot more impactful. Spoilers! 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 One of the things I liked about this book was, I think it takes on a very different perspective on the people who protest, the people who are fighting for certain ideas that actually come to fruition, right? There is a lot, in this book, there's a lot of suffering, right? And I think Hong Kong, one of her interviews, she says that one of the working titles, or one of the titles that she considered for the book, was Human Violence. And she was writing this book to kind of come to terms of how do we inherit a world that is so full of violence, right? And I think in this book, right, a lot of the characters are all reconciling with all this violence, right? And they are, they're taking action to address that violence, right? What I think is so interesting about this book is kind of regret that some of the characters feel, right? Like, for example, I think like the leader of the student group, his name is Jinsu, right? And he, he gets captured by the government, and he gets, pretty brutally tortured. So does Unsuk, right? They are both these, you know, essentially like pretty much leaders of this revolution in their own ways. And they kind of just have so much pain bottled up in that history. And I think in Jinsu's case, he ends up like just drinking on the side of the road. He's like hella depressed. His family has to support him, and I think that, I don't know if he explicitly says if he regrets his decision or not, but from when I was reading it, right, I got the feeling that he did regret his decision, and it made me wonder, like, there's always this perspective, like, you are the winner. Your ideology eventually came to fruition, but it was in the face of so much like pain and torture, and the people now get to reap the benefits. But if you were able to go back in time and redo the actions, make the same decisions, would you make the same decisions as you would back then, knowing that you would become successful, or you'd be free, or you'd be living the life you have now? And I feel like in Jinsu's case, right, he would say no. Took too much of a toll out of him. And he has this, like, line in the book where he says, like, transform them into beasts instead of humans, right? They torture them to make them beasts. Understanding that you played a role in this world that you're currently living in, and you advocated for that world, I can understand the sentiment that it's not worth it, but then you have Unsuk, right? And she does talk about this, her time in the revolution, her time resisting. She was also tortured as well, like extremely brutally. But I remember in the book she says, like, if she had to do it again, she would make the same decisions, right? And so I think it's super interesting. Like, we have these two characters who are these forces of change, but they have their own personal remorses about their past, and they have differences in how they would change that past if they could. So how she writes the relationship between the human body and the soul is interesting. You have your body and you have your soul, but you're contained in this container. You're in this container. Your soul is in this container that no one else can penetrate. Even as a soul, and you have your body just lying there, no one can really come very close to you. And I just think that's like an interesting dynamic that Hong Kong added. Okay, next is the Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop by Hwang Ro-byung. Again, I'm not Korean. Anyways, this book is about a Korean woman who decides to open up a bookshop. As she's learning how to manage the bookshop, make it profitable, and things like that, she comes across a very diverse string of characters who have their own internal problems about work, what they're meant to do, what their passion is, and how they want to live in the society, live in the world they live in. I love this book, and I read through some of the Goodreads comments, and it feels like everyone who's read this book says that it came at such a perfect moment in their lives, and I think that the character of this book would be thrilled to hear that, right? Because that is such a book lover, and she loves it when books come to people. I think she would love it if books come to people at their moment of need, and people can really extract what they need most from that book. Anyways, I would say the same was for the same. I think I read this book at a perfect moment too, but seeing that all these people saying the same thing, I'm thinking it's because this book has a universal message. This book is about this idea of work and the value of that work, right? So you can be hardworking your entire life, work yourself to the bone, and you won't feel happy. But that's only one person's perspective, right? You can also be a person who does the same thing and they do feel happy. And this book is examining how do we pivot from different positions in our lives and figure out what will make us happy and what we are meant to do, right? And this book has such a great diverse cast of characters who are just figuring out different aspects of their lives but are in their own way doing the same thing. They're just improving upon their lives and trying to make the most and trying to change what they can change to make themselves have a happy ending, right? This book really feels like an intro to these characters' stories, even though these characters are relatively older, they're relatively older, like around 30s, 40s. It does feel like they are starting their lives, and I just love the fact that it is an older cast of characters starting what they want to do, and that message and that empowerment seems very important to me, and it really touched me in a kind of a surprising way. I think my two favorite characters of this book was definitely the two protagonists, the two characters we meet first, which is Yongju and Mingjun. I think Yongju is just such a sweet lady, and her story is so touching, and so I feel like it is like quite relatable. Just like a woman who has worked hard all her entire life, did all the things she was supposed to do, and in the end she realizes that none of it is what she wanted, and the fact that and she thinks that I don't think she thinks she wasted her time, but she definitely thinks that she could have gone a different direction and been okay, right? She regrets not questioning her trajectory in life, right? And I love her talks, or her when she was talking with Minchon, and she is talking to him, and he has no passion in life, right? He's 19, has no passion in life, and he's just doing things that he feels like he should do, right? He does do them. And I just love that she interprets that as a good thing, where she's saying like, oh, you understand that there is a kind of a static recommended way for living life, right? You do your homework, get into a good college, therefore get a good job, and then you will be happy, right? And I love the fact that she's saying like, no, she's interpreting his questioning, his hesitance in his life as a good thing, right? Like she's saying like, this is a great thing that you're doing right now, because if you figure this out early, then you can really have so much time to figure out what you like in life. And I think reading that was not a revelation, but if it was something that we process things where if you're unsure in life, it is not a step back, but it's rather a way to kind of look on the horizon, look across the roads, and be like, okay, like let's just plan things out a little bit, right? Let's just stop and re-examine what I've been doing and see if I'm happy in the place I am. So I love, I don't know, I love Yoonju. I love, I love that scene in the book. Okay, Mijun, so he's like 30-year-old man who has done a lot of part-time work, and he's very similar to Yongju in a lot of ways, and I'm very glad that did not become like love interest. Um, Even from the beginning, I didn't really want them to become love interest because they felt like they were in such they always felt like they're in a state of discovery of one another that I don't know, I didn't feel like them being together would add to that, so I'm glad that that was not the path they're going on. I also don't like it when the first time like a boy and a girl meets in a book, they're automatically like shipped. I think that there is I don't know, some characters have a natural chemistry, I would say, and I'm glad when an author doesn't automatically push that kind of narrative. So whatever, that's a tangent. So he was a really good student. He was always studying. He got to a good college, but once he got out of college, he just could not find a job, right? And I think it's very similar to what kids in today's world are like facing, right? We are told that we have a certain plan. If you follow a certain plan, then you will achieve a certain outcome, right? And the plan is good grades, good college, and then good job, right? Especially in like, I think China is having that problem where like the youth unemployment is crazy. I don't know, to an extent, American education is also kind of facing that problem. But I don't know, I like the fact that he feels fine at first, right? In fact, it feels like he's progressing at first, and then in the middle of the book, he kind of has this breakdown when he talks to his parents or his mom, someone like that, right? And I like that at this point in life, he's kind of going what Mincho's going through, right? Where he is stopping, he's saying like, wait, what am I even passionate about, right? And he starts to find real enjoyment out of making coffee, right? And I just love the fact that he is like throughout the book, right? I think I think throughout the book he is by far the character who grows the slowest, but it's also for me, right? He was the character who was the most rewarding to read, just because you can still see his improvement, right? And you can see that he's trying to improve, and there are things that he wants to do and that he can't. I don't know, something like that, right? They're like he is improving still. Okay, I'm gonna talk about a scene, and it was like I don't remember exactly which scene it was or who was hosting it, but it was a scene about there's a roundtable or a discussion that was talking about work, and it's about how work makes people feel. And one can argue like this was like a big part of the book, right? Like it's one of the main themes of the book, that the your relationship with work. And they're talking about there is a trend where some people are meant to work and be happy, right? They're happy working, but some people just want to subsist, and they're happy to do that. And it's kind of frustrating for there to only really be one path, right? To be work. There's only it feels like there's only one path of happiness, which is to work and be happy instead of working to subsist, right? And there's a discussion where they're talking about like, well, why is there no way for me to just choose this other option of just working and subsisting? Like, I don't need any other crazy extravagances. I just want to live my life and do just enough. What I kind of liked about that discussion, there was a very human, like it was a very human conversation in the fact that they're only talking about how they feel. They're not talking about, I mean, I think they're mostly just talking about how they feel. I think eventually they start talking about like, how would the world work if people only work to subsist? Like, there's not enough work, stuff like that, right? I think eventually they do talk about that, but I really appreciate the moments where they just say like, oh, this is just how I'm feeling. I'm just so tired. I don't want to work. I just like feel like there's no point in it, right? And if there was a world, like I wish there was a society in which we can just kind of cut out a lot of this work that we need to survive, right? I actually think that separating the discussion of work and having a discussion that's like purely based off feeling is actually really enlightening and really important, to not shut those feelings down right away. So anyways, that's all I'm going to talk about that book. Okay, next book is called The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Fantasy book. I like this book. I think it was a slow burn, and I think it was meant to be a slow burn. It's about a boy. His father is a prince, but his mother is like a common woman. And he is brought to the castle, and he is taught to be an assassin for the king. Okay, I think this is definitely a slow read, but it's only because it is the intro of a series, right? So you are taking the time to understand the political intrigue, the characters, the setting, the actual plot. A story that's focused on purely one boy, right? It's literally just his own growth, and he's young. He's like 6 or something when the book starts, and the book ends when he's like 16. So he's not doing these crazy things in the book. He's literally just learning how to survive, right? He's learning like it's kind of like day in the life of a royal boy, right? It's that kind of book, right? I think there is like a comfiness to the book where it feels mundane in a way, and you kind of understand in the back of your head that there are things in the background that are happening, but the fact that he's so young, it kind of goes over your own head sometimes, as well as it goes over his own head too, because we're reading it from his perspective. So I think in the beginning, because it was so slow, it took me a little bit to read it, but I think that last arc was very interesting. Like, it kept me engaged throughout the entire time. I think I stayed up to 2 a.m. to read it, and I think it has a very rewarding finish. Anyways, now I'm going to talk more about the book. Okay, also, I feel like with the way the book ended, it feels like there are so much things that can be expanded, right? And one of the things that I look for, especially for fantasy books, is how do they expand this world, right? Is it in a way that makes sense? Is it in a way that's interesting at all? How do you make sure you keep your characters engaged in this world your character is living in, right? Our spoiler section, I guess. Oh, dude, when Bird was first introduced, okay, I was confused about whether he'd be a good guy or a bad guy. I think from the first couple scenes, I think I was very surprised when Fitz was saying he hates Burke, because I never got that vibe from Fitz, right? Saying he hates Burke, and I think, kind of looking back at it now, it's just like a boy saying things that he doesn't really mean. But also, like, there is justification in why Fitz might hate Burke. I mean, he did kill his dog. I think Burke even admits at the end where he's just like, bro, because I think Fitz tells Burke that he hates him, and Burke's like, oh, you thought I killed your fucking dog? Yeah, I would hate myself. Yeah. Like, there is a lot of Fitz doesn't completely understand Burke, and that's very clear in the book. And Burke obviously does not understand Fitz as well as Burke thinks, I would say. I think the Fool is an interesting character. I love characters who have this mysterious background or kind of prophetic in a way, and they feel like they have good intentions at heart, and they have a lot of knowledge. I think those characters are extremely interesting. I think King Shrewd is actually a very interesting character as well. I think this book has very interesting characters, is what I'm coming to conclude. King Shrewd is interesting because you don't understand what if he's good or evil. Like, you don't understand it in the first book, I would say. These guys are saying they're kingsmen, right? But as a reader, you don't have attachment to the king like these characters do. And so when Fitz is in the mountains and he sends a message to King Shrewd, and he's and that information is fake, and King Shrewd says go along with it, I really thought that King Shrewd was like bad. And then at the end, I'm just thinking, like, King Shrewd is just dealing with a lot, I would say, right? And you don't understand what behaviors, what actions, what decisions he might make for the sake of his kingdom, right? And I do believe, at the end of the book, I do believe that King Shrewd does a lot of things for his kingdom. I think he's such an interesting character. I think the assassin, Chade, I think Chade is also an interesting character, just because he's just overworked to the bone. He has this, like, such a allegiance to the king, who's his brother, who's his brother, and it's hard to understand what the relationship actually is, and their dynamic, and why he's willing to do so much for the king. I think that's an interesting dynamic they have. Rio's obviously, like, terrible. He's just an absolutely terrible person. He is just extremely selfish. He loves lavish things. He likes to believe that he's extremely smart and superior by birth. What is there to say about Rigo? Rigo is just annoying, right? Rigo is just such an annoying character. Verity is obviously you like him because because he's hardworking, right? He is foiling Rigo, the fact that he is very hardworking. He cares a lot for the kingdom. He's not condescending in really in any clear way. He felt condescending in some ways because he is a prince and he feels a lot of responsibility, but he's not condescending in a way that makes him hateable. Always works hard. He is just a very straightforward, honest man, whereas Rigo is always a sly political agent. Dude, when they fucking killed the dogs, they killed they killed both his fucking dogs. They killed Smithy. They killed Smithy. Smithy died from I think he died from a knife wound. And in my head, even though I think during that scene Smithy was an actual dog, but in my head he's a puppy, right? Because he's introduced as a puppy. And no matter how old animals are, they're just a little baby, right? So my Henny's just a puppy. And so that was so sad when you just like when Fitz just feels the light just blink out and Smithy's dead. Fuck that his and then when Fitz his first dog that we thought died, he's actually like in the mountains. The fact that that dog saved Fitz's life and like drags Fitz out of the water and then just dies. That is like, dude, that was actually so sad. Like the dogs really just like had it so bad in the series, right? They just fucking died. They died and for what? You know what I'm saying? And for what? Molly. How do I think about Fitz and Molly's relationship? I mean, judging from the books, like excerpts, I'm assuming Fitz and Molly don't get together. Um, it feels like he is stuck in he's stuck serving his king, and he can't have any other allegiances other than that. Um, Molly seems like a sweet girl. Like I don't know. I think she deserves to have a happy life and do good things and stuff like that. Like, I always liked Molly. She had a fucking rough hand with her drunk father, but she's trying to make the best of it. And I guess kind of to touch on like her relationship with her father, I can understand like he is the only parent figure in her life. Her mom is dead. He's the only person of blood, like of a strong blood relationship to her. And you know, even though he mistreats her, she feels like a connection to him that she can't necessarily just conveniently leave. And I think that I don't know. I think Fitz doesn't really understand that. And I think the book doesn't really delve much into that. But I can definitely understand Molly's perspective and and why she doesn't leave her father. Because you know, if she leaves her father, I think she'll feel truly alone. And Fitz doesn't come around that often, to be honest. So Patience. I actually okay. At first, I thought Patience was annoying. But you know, as she is further developed, you just realize she's just like kind of goofy, right? She's just very scatterbrained. She likes to be her own world, and even though she's very annoying and is very particular about a lot of things, and Fitz is kind of annoyed by her, you kind of realize she is good at heart, and you begin to, you know, I mean, for me, right? I begin to feel bad that she seems very lonely inside the castle, and she's only has these things to occupy her, like her hobbies to occupy her. I like Patience quite well, just because she feels genuine. I think the characters in this books who feel genuine, they're gonna be the ones that you root for. To talk about Galen, I mean, there's nothing. I don't even want to talk about Galen. Galen's just like he's just annoying, right? I think he's hypocritical. He is power hungry. He's destructive, condescending, all like the bad things. Like I would say the one thing that this book would benefit from is an assortment of characters who are a little bit more nuanced in their good and evil. I would say like I think King Shrewd is the most nuanced in terms of good and evil. But other than that, I feel like this book is very black and white in terms of good and evil, right? And you know that's fine. Like in that sense, it's like a kind of epic confrontation where you are clearly rooting for one side and you're not conflicted. But at the same time, I also, you know, this book is about political intrigue, right? And so I think that lends itself very well to stepping into areas of moral grayness. And I would just love to see like the series progress in that kind of direction where, you know, Fitz becomes an assassin, but he's, you know, extremely conflicted. He becomes conflicted about his path to become an assassin. He becomes conflicted with Verity, with his king, and I would love to see him kind of tackle those problems. I know he slightly does in, you know, when he's assigned to kill. He's assigned to kill the Mountain King, but even then he wasn't even killing him. Like he decided not to kill him, and he decided everything was a trick, and it was not exactly the moral confrontation that I was looking for. And I hope that there are chances where Fitz really does have to struggle with his assassinations and realize that these assassinations will have such a kingdom-wide effect. I guess we should talk about the skill. The skill is an interesting kind of magic system where I mean, they talk about different magics. I think there's, you know, Fitz's wit, which is just him being able to understand animals. Um, and there's the skill, which is the ability to manipulate human beings' thoughts and kind of force your own, like, I don't know, like values, opinions. You can force your own will to them, which is kind of scary. To be honest, like that is a crazy ability, and I'm trying to understand like Fitz has a problem with the skill because he doesn't let anyone in. He would, well, he doesn't not let anyone in, but it's very, he has a barrier that is very strong. And I think that I think there's gonna be, okay, this is my prediction. I think that is probably something that Chivalry placed upon his child. I'm assuming like he visits somehow, right? He somehow sees Fitz again, and he's like, he puts a barrier for his child, or his mom has something to do with that, right? I think that's probably the reason why he can't lower his barriers. I don't think, I can't really think of anything else because um, it could be the wit. I don't know. Um, I don't know. I think the skills, like the skills, are a largely unexplored area in the book. To be honest, like there are clearly rules. There are clearly structures to this magic system, but it's very shrouded in secrecy. That it's kind of hard to talk about it. The first book doesn't really talk about it. I'm assuming the second and third book will talk about that more. Thanks for listening. Those are my opinions about books. Bye.